When you hear the words rewire your brain, you might imagine that this is something reserved for a few gifted individuals, or that it requires a secret technique hidden away in distant mountains. But in truth, the ability to reshape your mind is part of your nature. Every thought you repeat, every action you practice, every emotion you nurture is sending a signal to your nervous system. Over time, these signals form patterns, pathways in the brain that determine how you perceive the world, how you respond to challenges, and how you experience yourself. To rewire your brain means to take responsibility for these patterns instead of living on automatic. It means to bring awareness to your habits, to question whether they truly serve your well-being, and to practice replacing them with choices that reflect who you wish to become. This is not a quick process. It is the discipline of returning again and again to new ways of thinking, speaking, and acting. Consider how easily the mind clings to what is familiar, even if it causes suffering. The mind will tell you that comfort is safer than change. But if you have the courage to remain present with discomfort, you will see that every moment of awareness is an opportunity to lay down a new path. Even a small shift, like choosing gratitude over complaint or stillness over reactivity, creates a change in your brain's wiring. Repeated often enough, these small shifts become your new baseline. Understand that the brain is always adapting. It does not stop growing or learning unless you stop using it consciously. The question is not whether your brain will change. The question is whether you will guide that change with intention or allow old conditioning to lead you. If you choose to engage your mind with curiosity and discipline, you will find that transformation is not only possible, it is inevitable. Rewiring your brain is the art of aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with your deepest values. It is the practice of becoming more aware each day and of meeting that awareness with responsibility rather than judgment. In this way, you reclaim the freedom to create a life that is no longer shaped by unconscious reactions, but by conscious presence. Every thought you think and every action you repeat is not simply an isolated moment. It is like a hand tracing lines in soft clay. The more often you follow the same path, the deeper that groove becomes. In time, the mind prefers these familiar paths, returning to them automatically because they feel comfortable and known. This is how habits are formed, not only in your behavior, but also in your way of perceiving life itself. You may notice how quickly you react with irritation to a situation, or how easily you slip into self-doubt when faced with a challenge. These reactions are not fixed qualities of who you are. They are patterns that have been reinforced again and again, often without your awareness. It is important to understand that your brain is not a static machine. It is a living, responsive organ that is shaped continuously by experience. Modern science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections. But long before this term existed, teachers like Heng were already describing the power of repetition and focus to transform the mind. If you continue to practice the same thought, "I am not enough," "Life is against me," "I cannot change," you are strengthening the networks that sustain this belief. The more often you travel this mental road, the easier it becomes to walk it without thinking. Yet this very mechanism that creates suffering can also be the source of liberation. The same process that builds unhelpful habits can be used to create supportive ones. When you deliberately choose a different thought, a different action, you begin to carve a new path. It may feel unfamiliar and uncomfortable at first, just as stepping off a well-worn trail into the forest feels uncertain. But with repetition, the new path becomes clearer, smoother, easier to follow. Imagine your brain as a garden. Every thought is a seed you plant. Some seeds grow into nourishing plants, others into tangled weeds. If you do not pay attention to what you plant, your garden will be overtaken by whatever grows fastest. But if you tend it carefully, removing what no longer serves you and planting what supports you, your inner landscape changes. This is why you must become mindful of your daily thoughts and choices. Each repetition is an instruction you give your nervous system about what matters. Over time, these instructions create the reality you experience. In this way, you can begin to reclaim authorship over your own mind, one small decision at a time. Many people move through their lives without noticing how much of their behavior is simply repetition. They wake up thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and reacting in the same ways, as if life is a script written long ago. This is the nature of unconscious habit. It is not that something outside is forcing you to remain the same. It is that the mind, left unattended, will always follow the path of least resistance. And this path is usually the one it has walked the most. Awareness is the first light that allows you to see these patterns clearly. Without awareness, there can be no genuine change. You might try to force yourself to act differently for a short while, but if you are not conscious of the underlying habits that drive your reactions, you will soon find yourself back in the same place. Teachers such as Heng often remind us that transformation does not begin with striving or with denial. It begins with simply observing. When you observe your own mind without judgment, you begin to recognize which thoughts arise most often and which feelings are triggered in certain situations. This observation is not a passive act. It is an active form of attention that requires courage and patience. You must be willing to sit quietly with yourself and see not only what you wish were true, but what is actually there. Perhaps you will see the tendency to judge others quickly or to criticize yourself for every small mistake. You may notice how often you replay memories of the past or how you imagine negative outcomes before they happen. These patterns are not evidence that you are failing. They are simply the result of countless repetitions, grooves etched into the mind by years of unexamined thinking. The moment you bring awareness to these habits, you create a gap between the impulse and the response. In this small space, freedom becomes possible. You are no longer driven only by automatic reactions. You have the chance to pause and choose. This is where transformation begins, not by fighting with your thoughts, but by seeing them clearly and questioning whether they deserve your continued energy. When you cultivate this awareness consistently, your life begins to feel different, even before any outer change occurs. You realize that you are not the same as your habits. You are the one who observes them, and in that observation, you gain the power to decide what you will continue and what you will release. Many people underestimate the power of small, consistent choices. They believe that if a change is not dramatic, it cannot be meaningful. But in reality, all transformation is built on simple decisions repeated over time. Even a single moment when you choose a different response creates a tiny shift in your brain's wiring. You may not notice it right away because the mind is accustomed to the familiar path, but with each repetition, the old path grows weaker and the new one becomes stronger. Imagine that you are walking through a field where a narrow trail has been worn down by years of footsteps. If you wish to change direction, you must begin by stepping into the grass where no path exists. At first, this feels uncomfortable and uncertain. You have to push aside the grass and watch carefully where you place your feet. But if you continue to walk this way, day after day, soon a new trail appears. The same principle applies to the mind. Each time you choose patience over frustration, each time you bring your attention back to the present moment instead of letting it wander into fear, you are laying down a new trail within your nervous system. Heng often explains that the mind cannot be forced to change all at once. It must be guided with discipline and compassion. If you expect yourself to be perfect from the beginning, you will become discouraged and return to your old habits. But if you honor each small step, you build confidence. You begin to see that progress is not measured by how quickly you arrive, but by your willingness to continue. In this way, small, consistent choices are like drops of water. One drop may seem insignificant, but over time it can wear away stone. Every moment when you interrupt an old pattern and replace it with a conscious action, you are proving to yourself that change is possible. And you are showing your brain that there is another way to respond to life. Do not underestimate the effect of these small moments. They are the foundation of every lasting transformation. Over weeks and months, they accumulate into a force that can reshape your identity. When you look back, you will realize that it was not one great effort that changed you, but countless quiet decisions to begin again, even when it felt difficult. It is a common belief that the brain stops growing at a certain age, that after childhood your capacity to learn and adapt begins to decline. But this is only a story the mind tells to avoid the effort of change. In truth, the brain is always adapting to the demands you place upon it. Whether you are 8 years old or 80, the nervous system responds to your focus, your intention, and your practice. This is why teachers such as Heng remind us that growth is a lifelong discipline, not a phase reserved for the young. Consider how the mind becomes shaped by the experiences you repeat. If you spend years worrying about what others think, your brain becomes highly skilled at scanning for judgment. If you often practice gratitude, your mind grows more receptive to moments of beauty and appreciation. These tendencies are not fixed. They are simply reflections of what you have rehearsed. When you understand this, you stop seeing yourself as limited by your past and begin to recognize the power you have in this moment to influence your own development. Growth continues as long as you remain conscious. The moment you stop paying attention to how you think and act, you begin to drift into old conditioning. But when you bring your awareness to the present, you interrupt the automatic cycles that keep you stuck. This is not about making yourself uncomfortable for the sake of discipline. It is about respecting the fact that your mind is always learning something. The question is whether you are teaching it with intention or leaving it to absorb whatever patterns are strongest around you. If you wish to keep growing, you must cultivate curiosity. Ask yourself often, what am I practicing right now? Is this a habit that serves me or one that drains my energy? This questioning creates space. In that space, you have the freedom to choose differently. Over time, these choices accumulate into new wiring, new perceptions, and new possibilities. Heng emphasizes that transformation is not the result of a single breakthrough. It is a continuous unfolding. Each day you have the chance to train your attention, to refine your responses, to expand your understanding. In this way, growth does not end when you reach a goal. It becomes the natural expression of your life. As long as you remain conscious, your brain remains alive to change. Many people assume that discomfort is a sign they are doing something wrong, that if they feel uneasy or uncertain, they must be on the wrong path. But in truth, discomfort is often the clearest sign that you are growing beyond your old limitations. When you begin to rewire your brain, you are stepping away from the familiar patterns that have defined your sense of self for years, sometimes for decades. This unfamiliar territory will not feel immediately comfortable. It may feel awkward, tiring, or even frightening, but that does not mean it is harmful. It simply means you are entering a space where something new can be created. Heng often explains that the mind prefers to stay with what it already knows, even if what it knows brings suffering. There is a strange comfort in repetition, because it requires no effort to maintain. But comfort and freedom are not the same. If you want to experience new levels of clarity and peace, you must be willing to sit with the discomfort that arises when you interrupt the old patterns. Each time you choose to act with awareness rather than compulsion, your brain resists. It will try to convince you to return to what is easy. This is where discipline becomes essential. Discipline is not the suppression of feeling. It is the capacity to remain steady in the presence of feeling. When you notice the discomfort, you can pause and breathe rather than react. You can remind yourself that this unease is not a punishment but a natural part of transformation. Over time, the brain learns that these moments of uncertainty are safe, and the discomfort begins to lessen. Consider how a muscle grows stronger only when it is challenged beyond its current capacity. If you lift the same weight forever, your strength will never increase. In the same way, your mind becomes more resilient when you choose to remain conscious in situations that used to trigger unconscious reactions. It is this process, meeting discomfort with awareness, that gradually rewires the pathways of the brain. Heng teaches that every time you do this, you are proving to yourself that you are larger than your habits. You discover that you have the capacity to remain present even when your thoughts urge you to escape. This realization is one of the most powerful steps toward true freedom, because it shows you that discomfort is not the enemy. It is the threshold to growth. When you think about changing your mind, it is easy to imagine that the work ends when you have replaced one pattern with another. But in reality, rewiring the brain is not simply about replacing old habits with new ones. It is about aligning your entire way of thinking, feeling, and acting with the deepest values that guide your life. This is why teachers such as Heng remind us that true transformation is not mechanical. It is an expression of sincerity and purpose. Without this foundation, even the most disciplined practices can become hollow routines. Alignment begins with clarity. You must ask yourself what truly matters to you. Not what others expect, not what your fears dictate, but what is essential in your own heart. Is it compassion, integrity, peace, courage? Once you become clear about your values, you have a compass to guide your decisions. Every thought and every action becomes an opportunity to embody these values, no matter how small. When you choose to act from this place of intention, your brain begins to reorganize itself around what you value most. For example, if you value patience, each moment you pause before reacting reinforces the pathways that make patience more accessible. If you value honesty, every time you speak the truth despite discomfort, you are strengthening the circuits that support integrity. Over time, this alignment creates a sense of coherence within you. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to move in the same direction, and this harmony becomes a source of stability and confidence. But alignment is not something you achieve once and then forget. It is a daily practice of returning to yourself, of noticing when you have drifted away from your values and gently bringing yourself back. This is why awareness is inseparable from transformation. Without awareness, you cannot see when you have become reactive or when you are living on autopilot. With awareness, you have the freedom to choose again. Heng teaches that the most important work is not to appear changed on the outside, but to be true on the inside. When you align your mind with your deepest intentions, you discover a kind of quiet power that does not depend on circumstance. Even when life becomes uncertain or difficult, you remain anchored. This is the essence of rewiring the brain, not to become someone you are not, but to fully become who you already are when you are no longer ruled by fear or habit. Rewiring your brain is not a destination you will reach in a single effort. It is a lifelong journey of remembering, again and again, that you have the power to shape your own mind. Each day offers you the chance to bring more awareness to your habits, to question whether they truly serve the person you wish to become, and to choose a response that aligns with your deepest values. Some days this will feel effortless, as if the path has always been there. Other days it will feel uncertain and uncomfortable, as if you are walking into unknown territory without a clear map. But this is the nature of real transformation. It asks you to stay present, to be patient with yourself, and to trust that every sincere effort leaves an imprint on your nervous system. Over time, these small acts of awareness accumulate into lasting change. Your thoughts grow quieter, your reactions soften, and your actions begin to reflect the clarity and strength within you. In this way, you learn that you are never trapped by old patterns. You are always free to begin again.